What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. Okay, so every now and then I find verbiage to describe, words to describe a phenomenon that I'm guilty of and that I see prevalent in society. So hold on to your seats and be prepared to be offended and triggered. If you are a human being, you probably relate to this. Almost everywhere I turn, I see human justification for their circumstances. I mean, can you blame us? We find ourselves in scenarios and we do our best to make sense of it. But I'm afraid many times the way we perceive things is actually an acceptance of our powerlessness. Sure, we give it flowery names and make it sound good, but it all falls under this theory. And in our making sense of it, we put ourselves in the lowest position of power that there is, almost in a way to submit to a higher power, calling it faith, calling it destiny, presupposing that things are meant to be, or the way that the secular world likes to call it, coincidence or serendipity. The problem with this goes further than just giving our power away. Because once we experience it, once we experience these coincidences, these things that fall into place, that we justify, once we experience it at least once, even once, and accept that we have no power in causing it, we seek more of that feeling. Because who doesn't want to be delighted by pleasant surprises? And this is so fundamental to human psychology that it has been studied since the first half of the last century and actually has been used as a way of manipulation in all technology and games being built. So what is it that I'm talking about? Our addiction to random rewards. You see, life, like slot machines, has so many different variables and so many different combinations and permutations of what can happen that variably we are bound to receive something that we deem as rewarding or more pleasant than the other things that are happening. Almost just by the probability of it, we are bound to have desirable things happen to us. And the problem with that is we start to bank on it. We start to expect it. And maybe in the course of living, we've had so many of these coincidences that work out well for us. And again, work out, however, that we justify to have worked out well. They could have worked out, however. What we justify, the way we perceive it, is that it happened for a reason. Because again, what can you do as a human being but make the best of what you have been given, right? So maybe in the course of our life, so many of these have happened that instead of planning now, we've learned that things work out well for us, like they've had sometimes in the past, that instead of planning now, we think it's a better course of action to submit our will to the lords of chance, because chance has so proven to us many times that it has worked well, that we lean more and more on it as a strategy instead of intentional planning. And it may or may not have worked out well, but because it's so tied into us twisting everything and saying it happened for a reason, that then we start to look for that surprise and reward in all the things that are happening instead of doing deliberate planning. And this is the biggest trap and the most damaging part of this phenomenon that we desperately seek and over time increasingly lean our entire life onto chance. We are fooled by randomness. We start to believe in it and believe that it can work for us to deliver us what it is that we're looking for. You see, all of social media, all of gamifying the experience of any platform is based on managing this exact ratio, the percentages of how much and how often do they need to show you what you want to see for you to stick around long enough. And so in the middle of all your random rewards that are delivered to you, all platforms and all third-party agendas are accomplished. And every so often you see a piece of content that resonates with you, that you so deeply feel, and that it almost resets the checkpoint and buys the platform another few minutes of your mindless scrolling, in which they can infiltrate you with all the other nonsense that is part of their agenda. And just when you're getting tired and about to lose attention, bam, another random reward. Another video or post or engagement. You see, life tends to do the same to us. In variable categories with variable different nuances, we find a way to convince ourselves to perceive what is happening as favorable. Because what's the alternative? Perceive it as bad and make ourselves more miserable on top of what is already happening in reality? And sure, it is more productive to perceive things positively instead of making yourself more miserable, but only and only if you have done everything you can to influence your reality. Only after is it productive. My main contention is with the fact that a lot of us do this preemptively, before even having taken all the possible steps to influence our reality with pure intention and consistent follow-through. And that's where this positive perception turns into a destructive pattern in which we live reactively and lean more on the need to spin things positively and have faith. And unfortunately, then, in that extra leaning hides our addiction to random rewards, which is not an adequate strategy to live. What I see more than anything in myself that hurts me more than anything else, that keeps me back more than anything else, and then when I look outward, I can see the prevalence of this exact problem, is this yearning for things to make sense, for things to add up, for all the dots to be connected, for all things to have meaning. This yearning, me wanting that inside. And that all experience should be a lesson in the guidance of some grand purpose. But the reality is that without being intentional about things, all experience isn't good experience, isn't helpful experience. All experience then is just adding up to lessons of some random purpose instead of one focused one that will ultimately benefit you. And all this yearning then turns into submitting because I'm still wanting it. So then I just have to spin whatever's happening and submitting to whatever that is happening without true intention and calling it destiny, like it's meant to be. Because what else is the alternative? Make myself miserable? When instead the yearning should be to lead us to actually being on the offense, to connect those dots and do the things that actually do make sense and serve a greater purpose instead of living haphazardly and hoping things fall into place. See, manipulation through random rewards has been used on us since the beginning of time. And again, the emotional strings it's tugging on, which is the desire to believe that all things happen to serve you in some way, is not malicious in its beginnings, as a positive perception to hold. But it can become dangerous if instead of it being just a productive defense, it starts to influence your offensive strategy. You cannot depend on random rewards. Life is not a lottery. And although luck does play a part, much of success is earned through successive steps, all hidden below the surface. All the small, little, forgotten advantages along the way that turns someone into an outlier. Where you end up is never much more than the often unconscious 1,000 little decisions you make on a daily basis. And then when left unconscious, your decisions are absolutely more susceptible to the shifts of the wind and less on your deliberate control. And then all you have left is to yearn for the next random reward to be bestowed upon you, when instead, we would benefit from becoming more conscious about the small, hidden actions that we take to shape our life. As someone thrown around by the shifting winds, regardless of how smoothly I've learned to sail in my life, I won't sit here and deny that life is seasonal and something bigger definitely plays a part in some of what happens. And like you, I would like to credit more of my life to the outside force instead of my own making. I would much rather believe that it had nothing to do with my lack of foresight or inability to anticipate or loose planning that resulted in or didn't result in what I imagined for myself. And the more I lean into that particular belief, the more I want to do things like believe in signs or look for confirmation in numbers and be superstitious and consider the horoscope and all the things that lie outside conscious control. Again, do they play a part? Possibly. But would it actually help me in what the next action I would take when I wake up tomorrow and sit at my desk at 9 a.m.? Does it offer any specific guidance? Not likely. Because just like a slot machine, which even if you've won before on, if I asked you to bring home a predictable income through it to feed your family, you couldn't. You will go broke or be lost way before another random reward will come and save you. There is no offense in it. But so many of us say things and live life like this and say things like, someday I will do that. Someday I will have that. Like what we want is just going to fall out of the sky onto our lap. The reality is that we are all the constructs of our decisions. Everyone is self-made, but only the successful admit it. I mean, why would you want to take credit for your shortcomings and your failures? Much better it is to just distance yourself and blame fate and blame luck. You didn't receive your allotment of random rewards, and someone else received more than you. It must be rigged. They must be cheating. No. Those that win get up and do everything else in their power so that when luck shows up, it has very little work to do. Don't hinge your life on random rewards. Love you, family. See you in the next show.